And at the time, I think Finn and Hazel were 10 and Henry was 8. And they were like, oh, Mom, you should do it, you should do it. And Henry goes, don't do it unless you feel comfortable.
That's my man.
Julia Roberts. To millions, she is the woman with the world's most famous smile. The radiant star of Pretty Woman, the fierce warrior of Erin Brockovich, and the beloved centerpiece of Ocean's 11. She reigned in the 1990s and early 2000s as Hollywood's highest-paid actress, a global icon whose face symbolized hope, romance, and resilience. Yet behind the effortless charm and luminous laughter lay a series of struggles that even fame, wealth, and Oscars could not erase. How does a woman who seemed to have everything, beauty, power, and success, still carry the invisible weight of heartbreak? Julia's story is not just about stardom. It is about the quiet griefs and private wounds that shaped her, the loneliness of standing at the very top, and the tragedy of a personal life often tested by betrayal, loss, and disillusionment. Narrator. Julia Roberts was not just Hollywood's golden girl. She became a symbol of possibility, of the American dream wrapped in a smile. But even legends cast shadows, and hers were darker than the world ever knew. Julia Fiona Roberts was born on October 28, 1967, in Smyrna, Georgia, to parents Betty Lou and Walter Grady Roberts. Her childhood was marked by both creativity and instability. Her parents were actors and playwrights who once ran a small theater school for children. Among their students was a young Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter, Yolanda. Julia grew up in an atmosphere of storytelling, but also a financial struggle and tension. When Julia was just 4 years old, her parents divorced. Her father, whom she adored, drifted in and out of her life. And then, when Julia was only 10, he died of throat cancer. The loss left a scar she rarely spoke about, but one that shaped her need for belonging and stability later in life. Her mother, raising Julia and her siblings alone, struggled to make ends meet. The family lived modestly, sometimes leaning on others for support. Julia often described herself as an awkward, lanky child with big glasses and no sense that she would one day become beautiful, let alone famous. But there was one constant in her childhood, the bond with her siblings, Eric, Lisa, and Nancy. They shared not only the hardships of their early years, but also the spark of creative ambition. Eric Roberts would become an actor first, and it was through him that Julia caught her first glimpse of Hollywood's elusive promise. Julia Roberts didn't step into Hollywood with the polish of a star. She stumbled in with uncertainty, rejection, and the raw determination of someone who had little to lose. After finishing high school in Georgia, she briefly attended Georgia State University. But her heart wasn't in academics. She packed her bags and moved to New York City, following in the footsteps of her brother Eric, who had already begun making a name for himself as an actor. In New York, Julia signed with a modeling agency, not because she dreamed of being on magazine covers, but because it was the only door open to a young woman with no connections and no money. She took acting classes on the side, hoping to land auditions. For years, the only thing she collected was rejection. Directors told her she was too tall, too ordinary, or not leading lady material. For a young woman already plagued by self-doubt, the words cut deep. Her first film appearances were small and forgettable. A minor role in the 1987 film Firehouse, another in Satisfaction the following year, where she played a supporting part alongside Justine Bateman and a then-unknown Liam Neeson. But Julia's eyes were already fixed on something bigger. She knew she had the potential. She just needed the world to see it too. Ironically, it was through her brother Eric that she caught her first real break. He invited her to join him in auditions, sometimes even sneaking her onto sets. Casting agents began to notice her unusual mix of vulnerability and fire, a combination rare in young actresses. Her breakthrough was slow in coming, but when it arrived, it came with a force that would change her life forever. Narrator VO. Julia Roberts entered Hollywood not with glamour, but with grit. She was rejected, underestimated, and told she wasn't enough. But her struggles would become the fire that forged a star. Breakthrough moment. Everything began to change in 1988 when Julia Roberts was cast in the coming-of-age drama Mystic Pizza. The film itself was small, modestly budgeted, and never expected to make a major cultural impact. But when Julia appeared on screen, with her wild curls, fiery presence, and undeniable charm, audiences couldn't take their eyes off her. She wasn't polished. She wasn't trying too hard. She was simply magnetic. Critics singled her out as the breakout star, calling her a young actress to watch. Then came Steel Magnolias in 1989. Surrounded by powerhouse actresses like Sally Field, Shirley MacLaine, and Dolly Parton, Julia risked being overshadowed. Instead, she stole the film. Her portrayal of Shelby, a young woman battling diabetes while holding on to her dreams of motherhood, was heartbreaking and radiant. Julia earned her first Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. Overnight, she went from being Eric Roberts' younger sister to Hollywood's newest daughter. But it was 1990 that truly changed everything. That year, Julia Roberts starred in Pretty Woman. Paired with Richard Gere, she played Vivian Ward, a prostitute with a heart of gold. The role could easily have been one-dimensional or even degrading, but Julia transformed it into something unforgettable. She brought warmth, vulnerability, humor, and strength to the character. Her laugh, unscripted, unpolished, genuine, became one of the most iconic moments in cinema. Pretty Woman exploded at the box office, grossing nearly $500 million worldwide. Suddenly, Julia Roberts wasn't just a rising actress, she was a phenomenon. At only 23 years old, she was dubbed America's Sweetheart, a title that would follow her for decades. But fame was a double-edged sword. Julia had gone from struggling to make rent to being one of the most recognizable faces on Earth in just 2 years. Paparazzi hounded her every move. Tabloids dissected her love life. And Hollywood put enormous pressure on her to remain perfect. For a young woman who still wrestled with insecurity, it was overwhelming. Narrator VO. With a single role, Julia Roberts went from a struggling newcomer to the brightest star in Hollywood. But the higher she climbed, the more fragile the ground beneath her feet became.
Peak career and achievements. By the mid to late 1990s, Julia Roberts was no longer just a star. She was the star, the face of an era, the woman whose very name could guarantee a box office hit. Her golden era was defined not only by her extraordinary performances, but by the way she reshaped Hollywood's idea of a leading lady. In 1997, she delivered one of her most beloved roles in My Best Friend's Wedding. Playing the complicated and vulnerable Julian Potter, Julia gave audiences a heroine who was not flawless, not entirely likable, but achingly human. The film was a global hit, and Julia's charisma carried it into the cultural memory of a generation. 2 years later, she starred in Notting Hill opposite Hugh Grant, where her quiet line, "I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy, asking him to love her," became one of the most quoted in romantic film history. Then came Runaway Bride, 1999, a reunion with Richard Gere and director Gary Marshall, which reminded audiences of the magic she had first conjured in Pretty Woman. But Julia's career wasn't just about love stories. She had the rare power to shift between genres, light-hearted rom-coms one moment, heavy dramas the next. In 2000, she took on Erin Brockovich, the role that defined her career. As the real-life single mother and legal assistant who fought against corporate corruption, Julia shed her glamorous star image and delivered raw, unfiltered humanity. The film struck a chord with audiences and critics alike. Julia Roberts won the Academy Award for Best Actress, becoming the first woman to earn a $20 million paycheck for a single film, a groundbreaking achievement in a male-dominated industry. From there, her influence only grew. She became part of the all-star ensemble in Ocean's 11, 2001, proving she could hold her own among Hollywood's most celebrated male actors. She continued to headline box office smashes like Mona Lisa Smile and Closer, films that challenged her audience to see her in more complex, layered roles.
Behind her laughter.
During this era, Julia was the most bankable actress in the world, often topping most powerful lists in Hollywood. She was not only a performer, but a cultural phenomenon. Her laugh, her hair, her smile, all becoming trademarks of a generation. But at the very height of her success, Julia struggled with the crushing weight of her fame. The pressure to remain perfect, to constantly deliver hits, to maintain her America's sweetheart image, often clashed with her own longing for privacy and authenticity. Behind the record-breaking paychecks and awards, Julia Roberts was still the little girl from Georgia who had lost her father too soon, who feared abandonment, and who carried heartbreak even in the glow of triumph. Narrator, VO.
Personal life and challenges. Behind the dazzling smile and record-breaking success, Julia Roberts' personal life was often marked by turbulence, heartbreak, and battles hidden from the public eye. While the world adored her as America's sweetheart, her journey through love, family, and fame was anything but simple. In the early years of her career, Julia's relationships were a constant subject of headlines. Her engagement to actor Kiefer Sutherland in 1991 ended just days before their wedding, when Julia, overwhelmed by rumors of betrayal, walked away from the ceremony that had been planned in front of the world's eyes. She escaped to Ireland with his friend Jason Patrick, sparking a media frenzy that cast her as reckless and unstable. The truth, however, was quieter. Julia Roberts was a woman searching for love in a world that scrutinized her every move. Her whirlwind marriage to country singer Lyle Lovett in 1993 lasted only 2 years, collapsing under the pressures of distance, fame, and incompatible lifestyles. Though they parted amicably, it left Julia with yet another scar from a relationship the public had picked apart. Even as her career soared, she faced the loneliness of being one of the most famous women on earth. Every smile was magnified, every misstep judged. Paparazzi stalked her, tabloids dissected her body, her relationships, even her family life. Family, too, brought its share of heartbreak. Julia's parents divorced when she was still a child, and her father, Walter Roberts, died of cancer when she was just 10 years old, a wound she carried into adulthood. In later years, she endured the devastating loss of her half-sister, Nancy Motes, who died in 2014. Nancy's suicide note referenced feelings of isolation and pain connected to her relationship with Julia, leaving the actress with a grief that was both public and deeply personal. In 2002, Julia married Daniel Motter, with whom she built a family of 3 children. To many, this was her happy ending, a retreat from the chaos of Hollywood into the sanctuary of motherhood. Yet even this chapter carried challenges. Rumors of infidelity, marital strain, and Julia's fierce protectiveness over her children often placed her at odds with the very spotlight that had once built her empire. Narrator VO. Behind the spotlight, Julia Roberts carried burdens no Oscar could erase. Failed loves, painful losses, and the suffocating pressure of perfection. Hers was not only the story of a star, but of a woman fighting to keep her heart intact in a world that demanded it beyond display.
Later years. Decline. As the years passed, Julia Roberts, once the highest-paid actress in the world, the undeniable queen of Hollywood's box office, began to step back from the industry that had both made her and nearly broken her. The shine of fame, so intoxicating in the 1990s, slowly gave way to a quieter existence, one that the world often misread as decline. By the late 2000s, the relentless demand for fresh faces and younger stars had shifted the landscape of Hollywood. Julia, now in her 40s, found fewer scripts that reflected her talent and depth. The same industry that once chased her every nod began casting her aside for newer names. Yet Julia herself resisted the label of has-been. Instead, she chose her projects carefully, preferring films like Eat, Pray, Love 2010 and August, Osage County 2013, where she could stretch her artistry rather than chase commercial appeal. Still, critics often questioned her choices, and audiences wondered if the Julia Roberts era was fading. Behind the scenes, she retreated further into family life. Unlike many of her contemporaries, she had no desire to chase fame endlessly. But this retreat was bittersweet. To fans who had grown up with her, her absence from the screen felt like a loss, almost as if a piece of Hollywood itself had gone missing. Then came heartbreak that no retreat could protect her from. In 2014, the tragic death of her half-sister, Nancy Motes. The media seized upon the tragedy, sensationalizing Nancy's note and her strained relationship with Julia. The actress, who had always been fiercely private, was forced to grieve under a magnifying glass. The weight of guilt and grief followed her, a wound that never fully healed. In her later years, she also began facing the cruel realities of aging in an industry that worships youth. Once celebrated for her radiant smile and girl-next-door charm, she found herself subjected to endless commentary about her appearance, choices, and relevance. Each tabloid headline chipped away at the woman who had once been untouchable. And yet, Julia did not collapse under the fading glow. She evolved. She moved to Malibu, raised her children away from flashing cameras, and embraced her new identity, not just an actress, but a mother, wife, and quiet activist.
Julia Roberts didn't step into Hollywood with the polish of a star. She stumbled in with uncertainty, rejection, and the raw determination of someone who had little to lose. After finishing high school in Georgia, she briefly attended Georgia State University, but her heart wasn't in academics. She packed her bags and moved to New York City, following in the footsteps of her brother Eric, who had already begun making a name for himself as an actor. In New York, Julia signed with a modeling agency, not because she dreamed of being on magazine covers, but because it was the only door open to a young woman with no connections and no money. She took acting classes on the side, hoping to land auditions. For years, the only thing she collected was rejection. Directors told her she was too tall, too ordinary, or not leading lady material. For a young woman already plagued by self-doubt, the words cut deep. Her first film appearances were small and forgettable. A minor role in the 1987 film Firehouse, another in Satisfaction the following year, where she played a supporting part alongside Justine Bateman and a then-unknown Liam Neeson. But Julia's eyes were already fixed on something bigger. She knew she had the potential. She just needed the world to see it too. Ironically, it was through her brother Eric that she caught her first real break. He invited her to join him in auditions, sometimes even sneaking her onto sets. Casting agents began to notice her unusual mix of vulnerability and fire, a combination rare in young actresses. Her breakthrough was slow in coming, but when it arrived, it came with a force that would change her life forever. Narrator VO. Julia Roberts entered Hollywood not with glamour, but with grit. She was rejected, underestimated, and told she wasn't enough. But her struggles would become the fire that forged a star.
Breakthrough moment. Everything began to change in 1988 when Julia Roberts was cast in the coming-of-age drama Mystic Pizza. The film itself was small, modestly budgeted, and never expected to make a major cultural impact. But when Julia appeared on screen, with her wild curls, fiery presence, and undeniable charm, audiences couldn't take their eyes off her. She wasn't polished. She wasn't trying too hard. She was simply magnetic. Critics singled her out as the breakout star, calling her a young actress to watch. Then came Steel Magnolias in 1989. Surrounded by powerhouse actresses like Sally Field, Shirley MacLaine, and Dolly Parton, Julia risked being overshadowed. Instead, she stole the film. Her portrayal